Tankies engaging in Nazi-like talking points. Jews in Biden's cabinet. From Shanghai Panda. Jews should not be a taboo word, just like African Americans, Asian Americans, or Native Americans. Many high-ranking officials in Biden's cabinet are Jewish Americans, which inevitably influences policy and military policies by Israel. This is an objective fact. Okay, are you guys ready for a hot goddamn take? The hottest take of all takes. Okay? The problem with... so let's assume for a second this person isn't an anti-Semite. I assume they are, so that's not really the case here. But if we assumed for a second that they weren't an anti-Semite, and we're asking this in good faith, or saying it in good faith, or whatever else, okay? The problem is that, assuming good faith, this is a statement that would have to be responded to with more nuance than just calling them, like, an anti-Semite, or saying this is anti-Semitic. It is absolutely true that there are disproportional representations of a lot of ethnic groups in a lot of countries. For example, white people in American government, or I don't know, like, Irish or Italian people. You can usually trace that back to some stuff, right? And there are a lot of Jews in, like, Hollywood, but then you look at where that comes from and it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, the threads of history bind us all. This happened and this happened. That's why there's a lot of Jewish people here, a lot of Armenian people here, a lot of Polish people here, a lot of Irish cops, a lot of Italian cops, all that crap, you know? The problem is that, first of all, like, nobody who asks about Jewish representation and power is acting in good faith. Like 0.1% of the time is that going to be a good faith question. But even if you assume it's in good faith, the question and its answers are like irrevocably tainted by the fact that all the other people are acting in bad faith. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's one of those, like, from a purely utilitarian perspective, there's no purpose to discussing it outside of, like, an ideological framework. A good example of this would be, like, Zionism, right? Because the loudest Zionists in American government are white Christians. So, taking that, it's like, okay, why do all these people support Israel? All right, well, take a look at Jews in the US. The majority of them vote Democrat, but it's mostly the Republicans that are, like, hardlining as a demographic behind being pro-Israel. So where does that come from, you know? Also, putting the Israeli flag to mean Jews is a big red flag. Oh, like I said, this is almost certainly just taken from, like, a Nazi poster or whatever. Also, by the way, really quickly, whenever you take a look at anything like this, anything that says, like, oh, look at how all these people are Jewish or whatever, overwhelmingly, like 9 times out of 10, they're lying. Nazis call everyone Jews. They call me a Jew. They call half of you a Jew, you know? Seriously, you look up, what do they mean by Jewish? And what they mean is like, oh yeah, this guy grew up in Brooklyn and their, like, maternal grandmother married a guy who was Jewish. You know, they treat it like the one drop rule with black people. It's not like serious engagement. I've been called a Jew. Yeah, it's everything, you know? I think one of the most revealing, inconsistencies. Okay, you guys aren't going to believe this. Did you know Nazis have an inconsistent ideology? Okay, so this is a statement of fact that everyone has to agree on no matter what, because if they don't, then they're insane. And it's that Judaism is a religion, culture, and ethnicity. You know? If it wasn't a culture or religion and it was only an ethnicity, it wouldn't be possible to convert to Judaism, because you can't convert ethnicity. You can convert you know, religion or culture. Culture, complicated, but, you know, a lot of the people who they say are Jewish are not of, like, the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So even Nazis have to acknowledge that when they say Jew, the group they're referring to includes people who have nothing in common bloodline-wise with, like, the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So following that, why do all Nazis insist that Jews can't be white? I ask you, why? Because they always say that. They cannot. There needs to be a hard line between being Jewish and being white, which is impossible to defend if you acknowledge the fact that Judaism isn't only an ethnicity. If you can convert religiously or be culturally Jewish because of, like, associations or relations or whatever, then how do you square that? Are they arguing that whiteness is a culture rather than a race? Because that's the leftist argument. Nazis can't argue that, because if they did, they'd be acknowledging there's nothing fundamental or genetic about whiteness. They would just argue that it's like a social trend that has nothing to do with race. But they have to argue that it's because of race, because that's their entire ideology. So how do you square that? The answer is you don't. And you're never going to get a clean answer out of them, because they'll just call you a Jew or whatever, you know? Deliberate irrationality.